And this is the afternoon session. Welcome back, folks. Michael Bryant with you here till 5, the Daily Debrief, and Aaron Keller coming up at that time. We are still looking at the courtroom, waiting. They're coming back in the case against Mr. Ramon Bueno. Closing arguments underway. The rebuttal by the prosecution is queued up, and then the jury is going to have this case. Let me tell you about a new case we're going to be covering beginning as early as tomorrow morning. It's in Florida, in the Tampa area. The case against Xavier Whitehead. He is accused of causing the death of 3 different victims found in a burned out mobile home. But apparently, from early findings, the bodies were dead, but not from the fire. Some sort of upper torso trauma that is very vague at this time. But these 3 folks, youngsters all really, 31, 20, and 28, the ages of the victims in this case. And on the table are 3 counts of first-degree murder with a firearm, also robbery, armed robbery, arson, tampering with evidence. It is a life without the possibility of parole potential sentence for Mr. Whitehead. So again, that is likely to launch as early as tomorrow morning with openings. In the meantime, again, the Ramon Bueno case is underway. And while we wait for the court to get back into action there, let's listen again to some of the testimony from the case. And of course, the critical testimony came through the victim himself. James Casey survived, shot in the face allegedly by Mr. Bueno after a traffic stop in the early morning hours of October 8, 2014. Let's listen to some of his description of what happened that early morning. Okay, so not really a big flourish finish, but just a reminder to this jury that there is no reasonable doubt in this case, and you need to find Ramon Bueno guilty of the many. I mean, just to remind you how many charges are on the table here. Attempted first-degree murder, 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, drive-by shooting, 2 counts of possession of a weapon by a prohibited person, 3 counts of threat and intimidation. Penalty with all of this mix is clearly life. But it all depends on how it shakes out when this jury gets the case. Adam Conta, I thought that kind of fell off the table a little bit there for the prosecution closing, the rebuttal. What do you think?
Well, I think she hit the notes that she needed to hit. I don't know how effective maybe the delivery was, but when you lack maybe the evidence to convict, she hit what she needed to hit. Listen, he was killed. He's 100% certain. This is about that man right there. And quite honestly, she's trying to convince a jury who wants to be convinced, I'm sure. They want someone to blame for this.
Right. And you know, I've done this many times myself. I've called him a murder victim because that's what you assume. But somehow the guy survived. Dina Dahl, you know, when the jury gets this case, and it's going to happen pretty quickly here, they got a lot of stuff to go through, not just factually, but this is going to be a crazy jury verdict form. Is there a way to make it as clear as possible for the jurors, you know, what they need to do and how to plod through one of these forms?
Interesting. We saw in this trial that they asked many questions along the way. So in a state maybe where the jury couldn't have asked questions, they might have had a hard time plotting it through. But I think they've been sorting through the evidence all along with these questions, and they might have a lot more clarity going into deliberations and have a faster process than we would have expected otherwise.
It'll certainly be a roadmap for them. Julie, it seems to me, you know, as we've been chatting about this, there's maybe two mindsets. What does the evidence and the law suggest the result might be, and what does the practical aspect of the sympathy of the victim and the nature of the defendant suggest it might be? I don't think it's the same verdict.
You know, when we were talking, I admit, like maybe my brain is fried from it coming to being almost Christmas break, but I forgot he made statements. And the statements he made hurt him a lot. And so I don't think we should forget that, because he lies through his teeth throughout his entire statement to the police. Denies being there. And you have to think, when you couple this with everything else, why does someone lie? Why does he say he wasn't there? There is some level of consciousness of guilt, and that is something that we seem to forget the jury can consider when they're deciding whether or not there's enough evidence to convict him.
And by the way, he beat feet, was on the lam for a week. And I don't know how you explain that unless you just say, well, I didn't know I did anything wrong, so why would I be concerned about it? All of that stuff may help the jury fill in some holes and get beyond any sort of reasonable doubt. So key to this case, obviously, was the testimony of James Casey. As the jury is getting their final instructions, they'll be deliberating soon. We're going to kind of look back at some of the testimony that they're going to have a chance to see when they get into that jury room. Let's listen. That is tough stuff to listen to, just factually. It's gruesome. You know, the pain is obvious. And here's a guy who's been waiting to tell this story for about 5 years. Julie Rendelman is here, a law and crime analyst. You know, Is his testimony enough? Let's get rid of all the other vagaries and the other conflicting testimony and the other four possible shooters in the car. Is his testimony enough to get Ramon Bueno guilty?
No.
No.
No, I don't think so. I mean, to me, I'm still stuck on the fact that he ID'd someone else, and I'm not sure how anyone can get past that.
Let me ask you that question, Dina, because he tried to, rehabilitate himself when he had to acknowledge, yes, I picked number one in this photo array of 6 people. I picked number one when it turned out it was number 2. And so he talked about the difference between what the picture looked like in the photo array and what he saw that night in the flesh of Mr. Bueno. How do you think that played out? Do you believe that? Is that just a convenient excuse?
I believe he used the excuse that there was a goatee that was shaved or something like that, the facial hair looking different. It's possible. I think he did an excellent job on the stand here talking about the hand. I mean, you believe that an officer is going to be very aware of the hands of the passengers in a car. Like he said, his life could depend on it in this situation. It did. He was compelling on the stand, and although I didn't hear his testimony regarding the facial hair, if he was able to say that in a convincing way, then he might be okay in terms of IDing him.
Yeah, this is the first time, Adam, I've seen a key player, in this case the victim, testify and almost have to rehabilitate themselves on a few points that were developed early on in the investigation. I found that odd, and obviously the prosecution wants him to get out in front of that so the defense doesn't swoop in, and they did, water it down. But still, as a defense attorney, you got to make something of that.
Of course, you go nuts over it. I mean, this whole case rises and falls with him and his credibility and his account of what happened. You have someone who identified the person wrong, who stopped a car because you couldn't see in it, who didn't see the shooter. It's really tough. It's really tough. Yeah, he was talking about the 9 other hands, but to me, I don't know if that did come off as well as they wanted it to. It seemed a little too convenient, especially when you didn't see the shooter and then misidentified him.
Yeah. Have I shown you what happens when you assume?
I don't think you have.
Did that already?
Show it again. Show it again.
Okay. So the jury is about to get this case, and from what we understand, the 3 alternates have been released, and the 12 that will hear and deliberate the case are settling in. We will, of course, keep you updated to the point that they finally get that case, and we will begin our verdict watch. In the meantime, quick break. Coming back, Arizona versus Ramon Bueno. It is active underway. Jury's about to get the case.